Well, you've had a low-end optic on your competition rifle for a while, and you're ready to move up maybe to the next level, maybe not to the top level, but maybe you've got between $1,800 and $2,200 to spend on a pretty good optic. Hi everyone, it's the Four-Gun Guy, and today I wanted to talk to you about the latest optic that I've purchased for competition, and that's the Vortex Razor HD Gen 2. Now this is the 4.5 to 27 by 56 model. It's got the EBR7C reticle, and we're going to take a look at this thing, and then we're going to talk about which rifle I'm going to put this on. What I wanted to cover today was, number one, why I chose the Razor Gen 2, because there are a lot of choices out there in that price range, around the $2,000 price range. And we're going to go through my comparison matrix. So this video does have my famous comparison matrix in it, where I put about 5 other optics choices alongside the Razor, and we just talk about some of the similarities and some of the differences. And then we'll have some final thoughts. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Well, man, it's been a scope whirlwind around here for about the past 6 months. I've gone through quite a few scopes. I've bought some, I've sold some, and as you all know, that's generally what I try to do, right? I'm trying to just stay money neutral here. I don't want to have 5 or 6 scopes sitting on shelves. So when I've decided that I'm going to move on to another scope, I make sure that I can sell the one or ones that I have. So if you recall, let's just go down a quick journey. I started off with a Razor Gen 2 actually on my 6.5 Creedmoor, my PRS rifle. I never did a review of it, and I kicked myself for not doing it. Well, then one day I was at the range and I looked through my buddy's Zero Compromise, and I was blown away by the clarity of that glass. Now I will say that was before I had an eye operation. So that really helped me, I think the Zero Compromise did. And I went ahead and purchased that. I'm going to do a review on that one, I promise. I keep saying I will, and I will. And that is what is currently on my 6.5 Creedmoor PRS competition rifle, is the Zero Compromise. Beautiful scope, great reticle, and it's worked out really well for me. Then I got the 22 long rifle bug. So I got that rifle, which I have just recently upgraded to a Voodoo, and there's going to be a review coming out on that here soon. And what I did on that one is I sold the Razor Gen 2, and I bought a Strike Eagle. Why? Because it had the same reticle as the Gen 2 does, which I love this reticle. And I wanted another scope for my old Bergara, because my wife shoots that when we go to the range sometimes. So I actually got a kind of a twofer out of selling the Gen 2. So I put a Strike Eagle on the 22. I actually have a Tikka T1X that I started with. I put that Strike Eagle on that, and I've been using that in competition. It's been working really pretty well. The glass clarity on that Strike Eagle is really, really good. And I did do a video on that, so I'll post that up here. It is a good scope. But here's the deal. As I'm running it in competition, I'm finding that my eyes still aren't super great close up, and I'm relying more on the clicks. These Strike Eagle turrets, and I say this in my video and my review of it, they are mushy. So they're not crisp, like you'll hear with this, or on, of course, the Zero Compromise. And the other, it's not an issue, it's just something that I'm not used to, is the parallax adjustment on that Strike Eagle. It is very, very loose, nothing wrong with that, but again, when I'm out there in competition, it's taking me a little bit longer to kind of get things in focus. So the focus for me is a little tricky. And I thought, well, you know what? I loved the Razor Gen 2 when I had it before. So I just went ahead, I sold the Strike Eagle, and I got this Razor Gen 2. Now, yes, there's a price difference there. but I'm still trying to stay within that. The parallax on this Gen 2 goes to 32 yards. On the Strike Eagle, it goes to 15 yards. That's a big thing in 22 competition because sometimes those targets are at 25 yards. Now, I've done some research out on the blogs, and what I have found is most people are saying, look, the 32-yard parallax on the Gen 2 is no big deal unless you are trying to zoom all the way in. I can tell you right now that if a target is 25 yards away, I am not zooming in to 27 power on this thing to try to pick that target up. Even if it's one of the 1/4 inch, which is this, the width of my little finger is sometimes one of the targets at 50 yards in 22 long rifle matches. So what they're saying is, look, if you keep the magnification on this below 12 or 10, the parallax really doesn't come into play. So I'm going to test that out, and we'll see if that actually works. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get to the comparison matrix, and we'll see how this stacks up to some other scopes in this price range. Well, let's start with the options that I put in the comparison matrix. So, of course, I've got the Vortex Razor Gen 2 on the far left. Then I looked at the primary arms, the Trijicon, Sig Sauer, Bushnell, Athlon, Leupold, and Steiner. Now, remember, I had the Steiner before as well on my first Bergara PRS rifle, so I know the Steiner quite well and really like that scope. Let's go down through some of the more notable things here. Number one, when we look at the glass, most of these are Japanese glass. We see that Leupold has Japanese, Korean, and Chinese glass, and of course Steiner is German glass. Magnification, again, not a big difference between these scopes, and when we get to the weight, however, there is a pretty big difference here, and a lot of other reviews have mentioned this, and I will too. This Razor Gen 2 is a heavy scope, right? This thing is 48.5 ounces, which is, wow, just way heavier than the rest in the field. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It is a very beefy scope, so if you're going to take this to some matches that are rugged, let's say, it's probably a good choice. Tube diameter 34 millimeters, the objective 56, eyepiece, all about the same there. A lot more reticle options with the Vortex, though. The only one that has other higher or high enough reticle options is that Leupold. All the others have 2 or 3 reticle options, which could really limit your choice there. Field of view, eye relief, all pretty good. I've always found that the eye relief on the Razor is good. Again, if you mount your scope properly, so you can take that eye relief into consideration. Re-zeroing, this is all internal adjustment pretty much across the board here, except for the last two. The Leupold and the Steiner have external adjustment, which is pretty good. I like the way you adjust the Steiner, but I've never had a problem with the zeroing with the Razor Gen 2, so that wasn't really a factor for me. Illuminated reticle, they all seem to have it, and again, I don't even use that, so I don't really care. The elevation and windage ability here, you'll notice that on the Razor, we've got 28.5 mils of elevation play, and that's pretty much in line with the rest of them. If you look at the Athlon and the Leupold, they both have some higher elevation travel, but again, I don't think that's a big deal for the range that I'm going out to with this scope. If I put it on my 22, I'd probably need to go up to about 14 or 15 mils at the most to get out to 400, 450 yards. If I put it on my PRS rifle, my 6.5 Creedmoor, then again, probably out to well over 1,500 yards on that rifle, and we never go out that far. So I don't have a I don't have any worries with the elevation, running out of elevation. Let's see, the parallax. This is one that we talked about a little bit before, but I want to really mention it here. You'll notice the parallax on the Razor is 32 yards. The parallax on the Trijicon is 20, and on the Athlon Cronus is 25 yards. So those are good parallax settings for something like 22s. Now, if you look at the SIG, the Bushnell, and I'll even include the Steiner here, that is not good for close-in like 22 competition where you may need to shoot down to 25 yards, right? Because if your parallax is 100 yards, 75 yards, or even 50 yards, you're never going to get that focused in if you have to go down below that. So keep things like that in mind, depending on the rifle you're going to put this on, right? If these are PRS rifles you're using, the big guns, 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6 BRAs, stuff like that, you know, no problem then with any of these because you're going to be zeroing at 100 yards anyway. And then the rest of this stuff, if you look at the what's included, you know, most have the sunshade as standard. Some it's extra. Lens covers are pretty much standard. On some of them it's extra. I know with the Razor, I think it came with the with like the bra that goes on it. The throw lever was extra with the Razor, but I really found that I'm not going to use a throw lever anyway because sometimes it can get in the way of the bolt. So there's the matrix. Now I want to talk about the reticles. All right, let's start looking at these reticles. This is the Razor Gen 2 reticle, and one of the biggest features, if you've seen my other videos about this reticle, is the fact that it has a 1/2 mil hash mark on the windage line there. So, you know, it's got a really clear center dot, the 1/2 mil marking, and it's just a clean reticle to me. Now let's compare it with some others. So here's the Gen 2 up against the Athlon Optics Cronus and the Bushnell XRS 2. I do like that reticle on the Cronus. It's pretty clean. It's got a good center dot, and it has the 2/10 markings both horizontally and vertically, which I really like. I kind of wish the Razor did have those 2/10 hash marks on the vertical axis. So again, Athlon Cronus, I think, would be a really good option for me from a reticle perspective. The Bushnell, I couldn't get a really clear picture or image of this reticle, but even by what I'm seeing here, this just looks really, really busy to me. So it's just not a big contender. Now comparing to the Leupold and the primary arms. The Leupold reticle, I'm really sorry. This is just way too busy for me. Too much to look at when I'm trying to focus on the target. And really the same with the primary arms. I don't mind the tree reticle, but if you look at that center, it's a chevron, so it's not a dot. And then you start to wonder as you're looking through this at the target, do I put the target at the top of the chevron, in the middle of the chevron's covering the target? There's just too much to think about in these reticles. And now let's compare the SIG and the Steiner. Now I could not find a good image of this SIG anywhere on the internet. So I really don't know what this reticle might look like. It looks like it could be good, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't find a good image of it. The Steiner, I've told you before, I owned one of these. I really, really like this scope. I do realize now, however, that while it has the good 2/10 markings, it is a clean reticle. I do like more of a Christmas tree, though, in case we get into a stage that has no dialing allowed. And we've gotten into some of those stages where you're going from 400 to 650 to 800 and you cannot dial. So you're going to have to rely on a good Christmas tree type reticle to do all your holding without dialing your scope. Okay, and finally we have the Trijicon 10 mile. Now, this is a very clean reticle, and it does have a good Christmas tree on it. I just wish they had done the 2/10 markings on the, at least on the windage. Even on the elevation would have been good as well. But this is not a bad reticle. The only thing that I'm worried about with this reticle is that it seems to be a solid cross hair there, so you know that may hide your target. So something to consider. All right, well, let's look at the unboxing again. Very quick. We've got a good box. It's got some instruction manuals, lens cloth, sticker. It's got the tool for the scope. It's got some other stuff here. A sunshade does come with this. What does not come with this scope, just to be sure, is a throw switch. So you're gonna have to get a throw switch. The other thing I really like about this is they tell you right here on the directions, do not exceed 18 inch-pounds of torque on the ring on your scope mount. So I really like that. You don't have to research it and go look things up and everything. I'm gonna get this mounted, and then we're going to go over the details because I don't want to sit here and fumble with it. I want to make sure my camera is going to focus quickly. So basically, this is the unboxing. You do get a battery and whatever else in this little package here. I think it's just the battery and the tool, the adjustment tool. So there you go. There's the unboxing. Let's get to the. I'll mount it and we'll look at it on the rifle. Well, look at the rifle this thing ended up on, huh? It actually ended up on my 6.5 Creedmoor, my PRS competition rifle. And let's talk about why that was so. I had my Zero Compromise on this rifle, and it had actually replaced a Razor Gen 2, as I said earlier. I know it's crazy. But here was the thing I was looking at. In 22 long rifle competition, you can have distances down to 25 yards. You can. It's very rare, but you can. So what I did is mounted this scope on my 22, my Voodoo, and I had the Zero Compromise already mounted on this. I went out in the backyard and I measured off 25 yards with my rangefinder. Then I looked through both scopes, and here was what I saw. The Zero Compromise, of course, was just unbelievably clear and crisp. Parallax down to that 25 yards, no problem. The Razor Gen 2, at 25 yards, clear, but the parallax was just a bit fuzzy, and I mean just a bit. I could have easily ran this on that rifle. Then I went out to like 30 yards, 35 yards, and they both just were perfect. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm kind of leaning more towards the 22 long rifle stuff for now. And part of that is just because I can't get all the components for the PRS rifle for this 6.5 Creedmoor. So I may not be shooting as many matches this year as I usually shoot because of that. So I just made that decision. Let's go ahead now and kind of get in on this scope and look at some of the good things about it. Look, we've already gone over the the stats for this thing. So let me just kind of come over here so it's not so much light. The rifle is unloaded. I have a chamber flag in there, so everything should be fine. I do have this mounted with a spur mount. I just love these mounts. They're not cheap, but I tell you what, if you want to be able to just grab this thing by the scope and pick it up and not think about if the mount is supporting it or is going to come loose or whatever, then the spur mount is the way, in my opinion, to go. So let's start at the back. Fast focus, very, very smooth, not super sticky, but not super easy like that Strike Eagle was. And again, I love the Strike Eagle. It's just, you know, it's a third of the price or half the price of this. We move up to the zoom. Zoom is very fluid, very nice. I had a throw switch on my other razor. Not sure if I'm going to put one on this or not, because generally when you get to the stage, you already know what zoom you're going to be at. So I may not. We'll see. And then we get to the illumination. Now this is a pop out, so you just pop this out, pop it back in. I don't use illumination, so you know, I just generally leave the battery out of it. Parallax, beautifully smooth, really, really smooth. Now we go down to 32 yards as we said in the overview, and I just told you that at 32 yards, the 25-yard target I was looking at was just a bit fuzzy. So I think 32 is a good, actually 28 things were clearing up. So I think this could go down to 27, 28. And again, very crisp, very smooth turning here. Then we get to one of my favorite parts of this scope, and that is, of course, the turrets. And they're very crisp, very clean. Come up. I mean, you can hear them. Let me take my microphone off and kind of just show you. So there you go. And again, you know, everyone likes to listen to the clicks, but they're not stiff and they're not mushy. I think these are some of the best turrets that I've had on a scope. It does go a ½ mil below zero. So if you are coming down to something that's below your zero range, below 100 yards, you can go a half below that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about here was the ease of zeroing. This is a very easy system to zero. I like the way that you do it. You take this cap off, you loosen 3 screws around here, and then there's a center brass screw that you screw in or out to move your reticle up or down or left or right for windage. And then you set everything back up, set the turret back down to 0. So you never actually leave the 0 on this turret when you're zeroing it. It's very interesting how that works, but it works great. And by the way, there's enough elevation there. So this is a 20 MOA rail on this rifle. And I have plenty of elevation to get out to 1,500, 1,800 yards if I wanted to. The other thing I like about this, again, is the locking turrets. So if you're on a single stage that has a single distance, single range to it, you can just lock the turrets. And if you're bumping around in a shoot house or a car or a tank trap or whatever, you don't accidentally bump the turrets. So I like that feature as well. And again, it does come with the sunshade. So, you know, I'll put that on. And again, I will wrap all of this in black tape so it doesn't get all scuffed up. But, you know, again, if we put this on there, the scope just gets even more beautiful. I love that color. So there you go. That's a great overview. Guys, I really wanted to get you some pictures through this scope, but the camera setup I have just, I mean, honestly, it sucks. And I wasn't going to put some subpar images in here. Suffice to say that with my eyes, and again, I'm an older gentleman, but with my eyes, this Razor Gen 2 comes surprisingly close to my Zero Compromise. The Zero Compromise, when I was looking at some wires on a telephone pole at 300 yards away, it had the stranded wires. I could make the strands out very clearly with the Zero Compromise. I could also make the strands out, although not quite as clearly, but I could still make those strands out very well with this Razor Gen 2. So, you know, I would say that if you are looking for something that is, you know, not a $3,750 scope like the Zero Compromise is now, they just went up on their pricing. I think this is a really good alternative to that. Well, as I said in the beginning, I've had quite a scope journey in the last 6 months or so, 6 or 7 months. Gone through a lot of different scopes, and I am finally happy with the two that I have for my competition rifles. I have this one, which is the Razor Gen 2 that we reviewed today on my PRS rifle, 6.5 Creedmoor, and I have my Zero Compromise scope on my 22 long rifle, Voodoo competition rifle. So I'm very happy with both of these. You know, we had some good alternatives to the Razor Gen 2 in our comparison matrix. I know there are others out there. Please put those in the comments. You know, I never do an exhaustive comparison matrix. I just pick about 5 that I think are relevant and pretty close to what I'm looking at. But if there are more, let me know. Let's go through really quickly why I liked this scope and why I chose this scope. Number one, I had it before, so I was familiar with it. Number two, the glass is excellent in my opinion. It really is excellent glass in this Razor. All the controls are very, very smooth, but not tough, not difficult. They're just very, very smooth. The turrets, again, very crisp, very clean. So when I am out there and with these older eyes, this is kind of blurry to me, but I can at least make out the 1, the 2, the 1.5, the 2.5. I want to be able to look at this and go, yep, I am at 1, I am at 2, I am at 1.5. So the same thing with the windage. The value for what you get here, I think, is great. Comes with the sunshade, which is usually about a $60, extra on some of the other scopes out there. And just overall, guys, this is just a fantastic scope. The Vortex warranty, again, you can't beat it. I know some of you say, yes, they need a warranty because they make crappy stuff. I haven't had that issue with Vortex, and maybe that's just me. And I think when you get to this level of manufacturing from them, I think they put a little bit more into the end product. So, with all that said, I want to thank you all again for watching. Thanks for the subscriptions, the great comments, and can't wait to get behind this thing and ring some steel. So until next time, shoot straight.